Hey everyone, J-Rob Plays here, and today I'm going to go over a very serious issue that Destiny faces on top of all of the other things that have been kind of self-inflicted on them with their recent TWID. And normally everybody's going to be talking about the solo op stuff or the recent change where they reverted back with having to go to Rahul to decrypt your prime engrams. In this case, what I'm going to be talking about is based on a recent video by Across, where he goes over what he believes is the most threatening thing to Destiny 2 going forward, and that's vault space. And I tend to agree that vault space is like a huge deal. And the reason why I say that is because I want you to get a look at my vault here. This is my Destiny item manager, and this is the state of the game for me. All of my postmasters are full of different tier 5 stuff, and I've got complete god rolls all the way through. I'm at 695 out of 700 after saying goodbye to so many god rolls I've stored or deleted, armor that I'm not using right now that I may end up having to pull again in the future. So it's pretty bad. It's really bad. So the fact that I'm at a situation where I can only play like 2 or 3 things and then I got to stop and go to the tower, which is a slow load. So I'm already kind of suffering from that, just to clear out my postmaster so I don't lose stuff that I don't want particularly in my vault yet, that I'm kind of holding as like a side thing. But I don't want to delete it either because it's tier 5 stuff, it's tier 5 armor and things, and there may be like weapons that I get that I can now delete 2 or 3 rolls of because now I've got a tier 5 weapon with 2 or 3 combinations of weapons that I'm saving. So those situations will come up. I'll be able to delete 2 or 3 things, and then I can grab some pieces from my postmaster, which is now my new vault, and this is a situation that I'm in. So the reason I'm making this video is hopefully it'll get a little bit of traction and people can see that this is an idea, maybe even repeat the idea, on Twitter and in other places, in other comment sections, so that it gets known to people. And it's something that hopefully Bungie can actually implement because they already have a version of this right now. So the solution that I have, that Bungie already has in my mind, is going to be the collections tab, and that's the solution to vault space. The reason I say this is because we already have weapons here, like that I can pull, and I can go and pull like an old weapon, and we use this for infusion normally, but it's already got a fixed roll, and I can pull it. The problem is we have now random rolls, and you can't pull random rolls. But what if you could go into this weapon? You can see all of the weapon rolls that you've been able to acquire. So what they'll do is then they'd have like all of the perks that you've been able to select, and then when you select one, it'll then allow you to choose another perk. And if you don't have that combination, once you select one perk, the rest of the perks will turn red, and only the green ones are perks that you can select. Same thing with the barrel and the mag, and you just select your barrel, your mag, you select your masterwork the way that you had it before, and then you just pull it from the collections. That way you don't have to worry about having so much vault space, or any vault space for that matter, because they could do the same thing with armor. If you go into armor, you can also go and you can pull old armor. You can pull leveling armor. So why can't I have armor sets and certain values? It'll say what's available to me, and then I can pull those values out, and I can then have that armor and not have to have it in my vault. So they could actually do away with the vault entirely with collections, and then have these slots that we currently have, just be kind of our most recent stuff that we've pulled. And even if you do have like a smaller vault and you have the collections tab, I'm okay with that too, because I don't mind pulling a weapon out of the vault that I haven't used in forever and then using some materials on it to level it back up to where it needs to be so that I can use it at light, or at power in this case. So I think that to me is the best way, because right now we're suffering so hard from having to manage our inventory that it's slowing down the game. And because armor again is eating up a large portion of the vault now, because you want all your sets, you want your tech set, you want your lustrous set, you're going to want a couple of different sets for certain other specific weapons, like the explosive set, because we're going to have that explosive modifier coming in Ash and Iron, so it's nice to have a set for that. And you're going to have these new armors that are coming in not only Ash and Iron, but also in Renegades. So at a certain point, like, how are we going to manage the tier 5s we have now for the tier 5s we're going to get? Like, Cross himself was kind of upset, thinking that Bungie's intention was just, you can delete all your old tier 5 stuff, you don't need it anymore because you have new tier 5 stuff to farm. And that's not a good solution, and that's not respecting the player's time. Again, Bungie's made so many poor decisions and player unfriendly changes in the name of player engagement metrics, and this change will actually affect player engagement in a positive way, in my opinion, because it'll allow collectors and completionists to choose or to chase a new grind, as each item in the game now becomes kind of like a Pokemon, right? And people love to catch them all. So you can fill out the missing perks for each gun. Like if I go into the collections and I look at what I have and I'm saying, all right, I got origin story, but I'm missing this and this and this perk, if that was like a reissued gun, for example. And then I can go and I can check my heavies and I'm like, all right, like say for example, I've earned all the perks and I get some type of a border, like a masterwork border around this, like you have around your weapons. So your then weapon would look like this with a masterwork border around it. And then if you have a tier 5 version, of course, then you would have your tier 5 and such. And then of course your perks would then be gold, and it would match your tier 5. Like that would be something really cool to aspire to, because other games have done the same things. So for example, World of Warcraft, you can't really beat World of Warcraft, and people like having the ability to beat games even in like an MMO or live service environment. And what they had was, before they started selling mounts in their store, they actually had a achievement that you could only get if you owned every mount in the game up to that point. So people would go out and they would do flawless encounters and they would do flawless raids, and they would go out and do everything they could to earn every single mount so that they could stand out. And it was like this recognition. There was only a few people in the game who could have this particular feat, and it required so much teamwork and so much coordination over the years to get it done. So it's like one of those pinnacle things, like really top of the mountain. I think a lot of players, guys like Cross included, who like having kind of like RuneScape-ish things, having something you can hold over somebody else. For whatever reason, people get off to having something that somebody else doesn't have. And that's something that even those players who are not necessarily doing it because they have an itch to scratch, like being a completionist or a collector, but they just want to have something they can hold over somebody. And even if it's not like to have a full weapon completion or a full completion of all the weapons or all the armor, it could just be specific categories, right? It could be like, I got all the primaries, I got all the specials, I got all the heavy. It's just something to make them stand out, or to have themselves feel like they stand out and feel like they've been acknowledged. And that's a big deal to a lot of people. So this change, instead of forcing people, for example, like right now, Bungie is essentially choosing for us how they want us to play, and they're basically herding us into how they want us to play like cattle. It's kind of the behavior of the current development team to do that, to think, oh, how can we force the players into this behavior that our higher ups have then asked us to deliver? Because again, people are really trying to separate the developers from the upper echelon, but there's a lot of people in the middle. There's a lot of middle management that could make that difference. Like you can say in the meeting with your upper management, oh yeah, we'll do that. And then you go back and you actually do what's realistic. And then when they come back and they say, oh, well, you're not doing this and this and this, and it's like, well, these are the metrics that we were able to achieve. You know what I mean? Like there's a way that if you're a good manager, you can insulate the out of touch people from the people who are on the ground and still make the game function and still make the wheels turn, right? And they just don't have people that are that capable that were able to then answer to the higher ups in such a way that placated the higher ups while also keeping the ground developers from having to make these mistakes, essentially saving these people on the ground who think that they're being well intentioned, and then they're like, oh, well, I know how to do that, we'll do this, and they think they're so clever, and then it comes out in the twig and everybody's killing their idea, and then they probably feel terrible about themselves because they had like what is kind of a boneheaded idea for most people, but to them they thought it was an epiphany, because it's like, well, this is what they want, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is how we'll do it, and aren't we so clever that we're going to make it like D1, we're going to go to Rahul and turn in the engram, and really it's just a metric to slow people down, and that's clearly what it was. It was very transparent. It was not to save people from deleting something. That happens super rare, and it may happen one time in your entire 450 grind, but every single time you get a prime, that's going to happen every single time you go to the tower, you waste time, you're waiting on a load time, you load in with 30 people, whatever the max tower is, and then you go all run to Rahul at the same time, hit up your primes, spend your currency so you're not capped, and then go back out, right? So again, the solution that I have to that, again, using this page here, this collections page that we already have as an option that already works in that way. It already has the framework. You can already pull weapons in their state that they were whenever you earn them, as long as they were not random weapons. All you have to do now is to borrow something like you would from a crafting system. So if you look at a crafted weapon right now, you can go to the crafting table, and then you can choose at the crafting table exactly what you want. And so here at the Enclave, we have what would essentially look like our vault and our vaults UI, and you would come in and you would then choose your category, and then when you go to shape, for example, you would have a very similar menu here, and in this case, of course, you have to have open inventory. So I'm gonna drag something out here real quick, so that way. And again, here, perfect example of the issues that we're facing and why it's such a big deal. I can't even shape items because my inventory is full. You know what I mean? Like that's that ridiculous that I can't even shape certain things. All right, so now that I've got the item moved over, and here's a perfect example of exactly why the struggle is the struggle, right? Like here I am just trying to go into shape something, and I can't even shape something until I have my inventory free. And so let's say I'm choosing to bring back a perpetualis from back in the day. The game knows and has tracked what I've unlocked from back during this season. And so this whole season, I'm way past that. And as long as the weapon is high enough level, it has all of my barrels and mags already in the game. I already know that I can do these. I've already unlocked all of these things. So what's preventing them from taking this system and integrating that in the collections as it is right now, and then integrating that with the way the vault works currently? Because currently, if you go to orbit, and when you're in orbit, you can actually interact with the vault. And it's a fairly new change, so maybe not everybody knows or has done it, but once you're in your actual inventory, you can toggle the vault. You can then go into the vault, and then you can see where you're at. And you can actually come in here, toggle vault. It says, control to equip gear. For me, I hit W to go into the vault, and then now I'm in the vault in orbit. So if I can get in the vault in orbit, why can't I get into that same type of crafting menu in orbit with my weapons and armor? Why can't I go into a weapon? Why can't I go find something that I've already unlocked multiple roles of, like false promises, for example, go in there and then select all of the items based on the same menu drop downs that you see right now in crafting. And it's essentially like crafting the weapon, but the difference is instead of crafting the weapon and then having it take up space that then has to be put into a vault to hold it, now you can actually treat it kind of like you treat the emblems. So if I have an emblem, I can always just store the emblem and then pull it back out again. And it's the same thing. It's collections again. If you go into your flare and you look at your emblems, you have all of your emblems, you have your finishers, you have your traveler stuff like your masks and stuff like that, and these actually are counted as gear. And again, we know this because whenever you pull these while you're leveling, they will actually drop and count at level. So this is something we're using to level up and power level. And so this system again already exists in a certain way in the game. All they have to do is tweak it and make it work serviceably enough that then we can cut down our vault space. So that way the older systems that are essentially being blamed for holding us back, the older PlayStation and Xboxes that are having limitations and not able to have huge vault spaces because the file would be too big for those particular systems. Now you can truncate that because the items that exist in the game that have to exist in the game only exist whenever you pull them out and they're in your actual 8 slots here, or however many few hundred vault slots that we may want to keep. And so now all you have to do is worry about having those items exist here, and then the way that they exist in the collections right now can exist the same way that our crafted weapons exist, as just like the possibilities. Now some people would say, hey, I want to pull a crafted weapon and I want it to be exactly how it was, the level that it was and all of that. That may be a little bit too much, but I'm okay with the trade-off. I'm sure a lot of people will be okay with the trade-off where, let's say I pulled the Solemn Remembrance and people are chasing this god roll because they wanted the headstone and firefly. I pulled it out. It's still a tier 5, right? I still wanted to be a tier 5, but it's like a tier 5 at like 200 power. And I have to then go and redo my masterwork again and unlock that. And I have to go and level it up or however much I have to get, and I have to go and pay, a bunch of my cores to get it back to 450 or 550 at the time. And that would be fine with me. Even though it's annoying to have to spend this resource, it's worth it to me to have a weapon that I know that I can always pull in the future rather than just losing it. If I deleted this role, I'd have to go play comp again and again and again and hope that this thing even dropped. Hope it dropped at a high enough tier if I'm not high enough for it, right? Let's say I was doing this at 400. I didn't want a tier 4. I wanted a tier 5 drop. And so hope it dropped at a prime, for example, for some people. This is the reality of the game that I'm explaining. And then you have to then hope it comes with this role. The first time I just got headstone. Second time I just got firefly. Third time I finally got lucky in my third role. I mean, that's super lucky to me. Headstone, firefly dropped together. And I've got some other good roles like slide shot and mag howl. Those are pretty good roles as well. So it's kind of a PvE and PvP role, even though I wouldn't use this in PvP. It's there if I wanted it to, and it's got a good role for it. So I don't want to make the video too long. Basically, in summary, again, the vault space I think is going to be a really big way for Bungie to come back from some of the self-inflicted wounds. People have said they've shot themselves in not only one foot but in both feet. They put their both feet in their mouth. Like, however you want to say it, Bungie has made some very poor choices, and they've done so like with so much feedback against those choices that you would think, why would they even conceptualize this, even if it was months ago? But they'd still do it anyways in the name of trying to, farm player engagement essentially, or hit their metric. And they try to set up this like idealistic world in their head in which the players behave the way that they expect them to behave, and the way that they would play, even though a lot of the people making the decisions don't even really play the game in the way that we play the game. And you can tell, right? Everybody's calling things tone deaf and all of that. The idea, though, is that now you can actually foster some goodwill with the community by trying to get this change out as soon as possible. I know it's not going to be possible to get out in Renegades. That's way too soon. Best thing that it can do for Renegades is to not reduce us back down to 200, right? Like, that's the easy win. That's the easy layup W. Just set the value, go in there and set the value to 400 instead. You know what I mean? And have us grind to 1,000 or whatever the hell they want us to do, but at least don't drop us down all the way to 200 again and start over again. Obviously, keep the new gear for this season as new gear in Renegades, so we don't lose the benefit of our new gear. It should be new gear from Edge of Fate on, not new gear every 6 months, right? Like, that's, again, another ridiculous thing. Those are the two easy wins for Renegades, but they're going to have something that's going to be the big thing for the next year. Like, this, again, is supposed to be a 3 to 5 year story with the 9. And they can really start the year off with a bang next year with that release, showing that they have this as an option. I mean, if they can get it in by Renegades, that would be insane. I don't think it's possible with the way that the engine is and how long it takes to work on the engine, but they can certainly crunch and get it done by the big release of next year, clearing up the vault space issue, because they're already going to give us however many few hundred slots in Renegades, but then they can add on top of that, and they could even announce it early. They can show off every time that they have a little bit of a developer Q&A, hey, how's the collections going, and show off a little bit of stuff and kind of give us little tidbits to remind us, hey, this is coming, so that people that aren't playing right now can have in their mind, well, when they do that, I'm going to go back and play. And then hopefully that'll increase the player base for the first time instead of bleeding little by little. This is basically becoming a death of 1,000 cuts when it comes to all of their changes that they're making that are negative, and they create negative sentiment. So many different superlatives that have been thrown out there, calling them, again, tone deaf, out of touch, stubborn. Really, I mean, there's somebody somewhere has to be like eternally stubborn to the point that they're like, I know this is a bad thing, but I'm going to push these buttons and input this line of code and hit run, and test this out, even though I know this bad thing that I'm building is bad. Like, they just will not refuse to, because it's their job, right? And it's what they enjoy doing. It's their livelihood. They have families. I get it. But if you run yourself out of a game, you've seen what happens when you make these poor decisions. People lose their job, and it may not be that person that made that mistake, or it may not be that person that's stubborn and that decided to stick with a bad play because it was too late in the game to change it. It may not be that person losing their job, but somebody will lose their job. And I hope that the people that have made these errors, specifically guys like Justin, who is now the Bungie lead, who has acknowledged that he's made errors, who joked about Overdelivery, which was in bad taste. Like, some people liked it and they thought it was funny. I thought it was unbelievably poor taste to joke about something like that, because even though in the context of his situation, he wasn't necessarily talking about the things that came down the pike because they were already in development, but the timing of his under delivery was literally right before them under delivering purposefully, right? So it's hard not to clear him of that, because he had to have known a little bit about what's coming down at that point, when he's, as the guru of live service back then, who has shown that obviously his skills as a guru of live service have been translated. And now he's here, this Bungie lead, which in my mind, this guy's failed upward, because even in his address, he spoke about the idea of designing systems in early D2 launch that he got horribly wrong. Like, in my mind, I'm like, how do we have this kind of a person at the helm when we know he's already made mistakes? Like, I get it. There's that argument of, well, he's made these mistakes, so he knows not to make these mistakes. But then he continually made those mistakes. He made those mistakes early D1. He made the mistake when he went out at the conference where he started talking about, hey, let's have him one good expansion and then have a bunch of little ones that are like not as good as that expansion, so that people don't get accustomed to us always blowing it out the water, so that we don't have to crunch the people. But then when you look at Bungie's history, they hired a bunch of people for a bunch of incubation projects that decided that they were going to, get into all these different spaces. And had they just taken those resources that they put into those incubation projects, and not including Marathon, like Marathon is the biggest one, but all the other small ones, if they redirected that into Destiny and over delivered all of those years that they could have, they may not have had to lay off anybody. Destiny may still have a huge player base. You know what I mean? Destiny may still be bigger than what it was with Final Shape, right? Like, it may have just maintained that because the game was always that good, because you had that large of studio, and they may be a bigger studio than they are now, but because of their poor decisions, because they're purposeful under delivery, trying to operate in a way that they knew better than the people who bought their product, was their downfall. And obviously it came from the top, right? Obviously that's Pete Parsons' attitude. You can already tell based on some of the stories that come out that that's the kind of person that he is. He's probably so egotistical that he believes that he still hasn't made any mistakes even on the way out, even after being forced out. He would probably, to his last day, say, if I would have had my full say, the game would have been even better, right? That's just the kind of person he probably is based on the stories. But now you have this guy, Justin, who has failed in early D1 again, who's failed in middle D1, who's failed in late D1, and now he's supposed to save Marathon and somehow also herald over somebody who's going to save Destiny. It is true that he has the opportunity to make some sweeping changes because he's got an engineering background, but again, he doesn't have a background of success. He has a background, again, to repeat it, of failing upwards. And what that means is that even though he has failed in his projects to the point that these systems that he would have created have been completely overhauled and are nothing like what he originally created, it's basically creating a problem and then also creating the solution to that problem, that has somehow been rewarded by being the top person at Destiny 2, at Bungie in general. And what that speaks to is that he's probably just good at politics. He's probably saying the right things to the right people and good enough to fake it till he's making it, basically, at this point. And now it's his head on the line, hopefully. And I hope that Sony gives him less time than Bungie gave all of their other executives. Some executives got 5 or 6 years, some got 2 or 3. I hope he gets like 2 years max. He gets a year to work on something in the oven, right? Because there's already been a year of development done before he's taken over, and then another year to expand on that. If in 2 years' time, Destiny is not popping again, like Final Shape level popping again, I would find somebody else that can make it that, because it can be that. Like, the systems are in place, the gunplay is amazing, the story can go just about anywhere. We've already gotten to the point where we're no longer shackled to the Witness, shackled to the Soul system. We can go outside the Soul system. We can go to Fundament. We can go to the Ascendant Plane. We can go to the Distributary, and we can have all kinds of adventures in the Distributary on the other side of the Dreaming City. And we can also even explore some of the Exo Stranger Elsie's timelines. We can find a way to create the technology to go and save those timelines in which people who were our allies are now our enemies, like Eris, for example, who became essentially Savathun in another timeline. And those are the people that we battle and we fight. And it's just endless, right? Like, the ideas are endless. The story is endless at this point. They can continue to make Destiny for another 20 years. D3 can have that story, right? D3 could be like D3, Back to the Future or some crap, the whole D3. But the idea is that you need people in place that are going to listen to player feedback, that actually play the game. Like, you have to listen to people that actually play the game. And then you also have to have people that are able to work on a product and set their ego aside and set their personal identity aside and stop trying to self-insert themselves into the game. Like, stop trying to take their identity, who they are as a developer, and put that into the game, because the game, while they are making it, they're not making it for themselves. So they shouldn't be. They should be making it for the masses. So the game should have mass appeal. It should be as appealing as possible to as many people as possible. And the changes, even though you have some of these changes that you make that affect your game negatively, for example, like having the power grind be a little too fast, they have to stop trying to fix that so fast and then fix some of the things that are actually negatively impacting the player first, because that's how it always is, right? If there's an issue that's affecting the player, it can go on for years. But if it's affecting the economy of the systems to where the point where players can exploit it and get things done too quickly, or have too much of one thing, too many cores, too much glimmer, too much experience, too many drops, too much power in a short period of time, boom, it's fixed right away. The very next update or very next major update, it's immediately addressed, right? But then you have things that have been gone on for years that are still broken in the game that still haven't been fixed. Perfect example is there's still exotic missions that are bugged that are in the portal right now that can still get bugged and soft locked, and the player has to then start over or refresh it or lose the timer, and that affects player progress, and that's gone on for much longer than you can say, oh, well, this person hasn't been in position long enough for the development cycle. So people who use that whole, well, it's in development, they can't fix it, all of that, then why can they fix these issues that crop up so fast if it affects the game negatively to the point where they lose player engagement? When that happens, the fix is immediate. So it's hard to convince me that the fix wouldn't be immediate again if there was something that they knew they wanted to do and they could go and they fix it right away. So anyways, rant over. I didn't mean to get fully into that, but it's really tied together, like this system change and the recent TWID and the way things are being handled and done is all kind of linked together at this point. And I'm not one to always make videos complaining about every single change. That's just not the kind of channel that it is right now. Maybe in the future I might get more newsy and stuff, but I just tend to make a lot of guides and helpful videos right now. However, I did want to put this out because the comment that I left on Cross's video did get some feedback like, hey, this should be something that's pinned in the comment. This should be something that's out there. So that way, hopefully, if it does get out there and there is somebody actually at Bungie whose job is to go through and run through the video ideas that people are putting out and run through a lot of these things that, on some off chance it gets shared and it gets seen, and then the change gets implemented within the next year, I think that will really make a huge difference in player experience. And hopefully you guys agree. If you have any additional things you would like to add on to the idea or like some alternative views, again, you can drop that down in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.